Hey guys, we're back at the bench today to take a look at this Atlas Trainman Southern Pacific Bay window caboose. We're not really looking at the caboose in general. I'm not going to do a review on it or anything. What we are going to do, like I do with all my equipment, is get rid of this ugly 3-rail coupler, replace it with Kadee number 740s. So I'll show you how to convert that with an Atlas caboose. But most importantly, we're going to get rid of the lighting that's inside the caboose and convert it to an LED strip with a constant flicker-free board from Gunrunner John on the OGR forum. Now, all these cabooses come with lights. They're incandescent. They have an on-off switch. You can turn them off if you want. You can leave them on. Now, personally, I don't really care for the lights. I don't like running lights in my locomotives, like in the cab. I don't like caboose lights. When you think about it, when you see a train out there at night, you don't see the crew running with their cab lights on. You wouldn't have seen the crew running with the caboose lights on. Maybe the conductor was sitting at the desk and he had his desk light on, but for the most part, the lights were off. This is toy trains, it's 3-rail, so the lighting gives it a cool effect. I'll go ahead and keep it, but I am going to improve on it. Right now the lights are off. I'll power it up to 12 volts. For you guys that run conventional, there's 8 volts. You don't even see the lights. So if you're running conventional, this is really an improvement by putting these lights in, because no matter what the track power is, you're going to get a full constant LED light inside the caboose. So we're at 8 volts now. I'll crank it up to 12. You just start to see them come on a little bit. I don't know, I don't run conventional, but I'm sure you probably run around between 8 to 12 volts for a good train speed. Now all of us command control guys, we run at full volts, which is normally about 18. So that's what you're going to get with this. You got, I think there's 2 bulbs in there. We'll take a look when I get it apart, but there's 2 bulbs in there. That's at 18 volts, full bright. Now the problem is when you're running this caboose along your track, the rollers get dirty, the track gets dirty, so you're going to get the flicker. This track isn't too dirty, but as it goes over switch frogs, dirty track, insulated joints, you're going to get that flicker. And as your train is rolling, 30, 40 scale miles an hour, you really notice that flicker bad. It looks like they're watching they got a disco going on in there. They're watching a movie, and that drives me nuts. If you're going to have lights in this caboose, they need to be constant. I don't want to see them flickering. So we're going to use a strip of LEDs here and the lighting board from Gunrunner John. Now you can buy these kits from Henning's Trains that Gunrunner John designed. They come with the board, the LED strips, the wires. It's solderless. I bought these boards separate, so I will be doing soldering. I got my wire, I got my solder. I'll get out the soldering iron and I'll solder these up myself. I got the LED strips from leftovers. These were scraps. They didn't cost me anything. If you look at previous videos of our layout, you'll see the display cases that are built in the front of the layout. Every shelf has a strip of LEDs. Well, these are just leftovers. So I got a ton of these LEDs laying around. I can light cabooses with them. I can light passenger cars with them. It's basically the same thing that comes with the kit if you buy it from Henning's Trains or Gunrunner John. So here's a close-up look at this board that we're going to use. We're going to take the track power. This board is clearly marked AC and DC. So the AC side is obviously where you're going to make your track connections. AC doesn't matter, positive, negative. I'm sure inside the caboose there's a red and a black. Doesn't matter, red, black, black, red. Hook that up however you can. Now for the LEDs, this board is clearly marked DC, positive and negative. Positives on the left, negatives on the right. The same with the LED strips. These are marked positive and negative. So when you connect these LEDs inside the caboose, you have to make sure that the positive and the negative to the LEDs are properly coordinated with the positive and negative on this board. One other thing about these boards is I mentioned they're constant lighting, so it eliminates all the flickering, but they are adjustable for these LEDs. There's an adjustment pot right there. You can take a small flat blade screwdriver or a tiny Phillips screwdriver and you can turn that up or down. So once we get the lights in there, they're wired in, we'll turn the track power on, put the shell back on the caboose and see exactly how bright we want these LEDs. Because there's going to be a lot more LEDs in here than just the 2 bulbs, if you turn this thing up to full power, it's probably going to be pretty bright. It'll probably be too bright for my taste. So we'll use this adjustment pot, we'll dial it down, and you can dial in the look that you want, whether it's kind of dim or really bright. Now I'm not going to show you I'm not going to keep the camera running while I get this thing apart. I haven't had one of these apart before, so I'm not exactly sure how easy it is to get apart. We'll take off the trucks and take the screw out of the bolster here and here, and because it's powered, there's a wire connector here for the roller, and then there's also a ground wire on each truck that's screwed into the other side. So we'll get those screws out of the bolster, the trucks will come off, we'll carefully take the wires off, and then we'll have access to the Kadee mounting holes. Now on Atlas equipment, they provide, there's a built-in pad per se to bring the floor of the car flush to the end of the car, and then there's also 2 holes here which are not exactly perfect for the Kadee draft gearbox. They're a little bit off. But in my previous videos, I showed you that I drill out the holes, the mounting holes in those draft gearboxes to 3/32 so the screw will slide through. That also allows me a little bit of wiggle room with the screw so I can still use these 2 holes here without having to re-drill. You put the screws in at an angle and they'll hit the holes just right, and then you can screw them down tight. Also with the Atlas equipment, usually you need some type of spacer because the coupler height is not exactly perfect with what they have set up. So we'll probably have to put a 25 or a 30 spacer in there to get it down where it needs to be, but we'll figure that out once I get the trucks off. Once I get these couplers mounted on there, we'll see what it looks like and adjust that accordingly. So I got this one truck off to show you how I got it off. You take out the bolster screw, and that obviously takes the truck off. And then there's 2 screws here that hold this piece on the underside of the truck. So we take those 2 out, and then you'll see the ground wire here was attached to the top of the bolster here. Once you get that screw out, that wire comes off. Take the other screw out of that side, and then your whole coupler assembly comes off. I've showed you in a previous video how I'll get rid of this. I'll put this in the vise and I'll take the hacksaw and just chop this whole thing off. That way it doesn't interfere with my Kadee coupler. Now to get this piece out of the truck, I actually pulled this axle out of the side frames. Once you get the bolster off, this is kind of flimsy and you can carefully get this rear axle out, and then this whole piece will slide out. Now the wire here for the hot side, the center rail, is soldered on. So I'm going to heat up the soldering iron to get that off, and I'll solder it back on later. I thought it was just a slide connector, but it's not. It's actually soldered on, and in order to get this wire back through the floor when I get this caboose apart, this needs to come off. So I'm going to heat up the soldering iron, I'll get this other truck off, unsolder the wires, and pull this whole thing apart. You can see here I've got the roller assemblies completely off now. It took a split second, touch that with the soldering iron, that comes right off. So those are both off. I got the bolsters cut down, put those in the bench vise, hacksawed them off, hit them with the grinder, cleaned them up. Now you don't have to do that. You can leave that other you can leave that extra metal on there, and you can just take off the coupler if you choose. You take the bottom screw out and the whole assembly comes off, and you still have that. I throw those away, but you can keep them if you want. I just like to have these bolsters nice and clean and straight like a 2-rail pair of trucks. Now I'm pretty sure I can see tabs here, 2 tabs here, so I'm thinking I hit the flat blade screwdriver on these 4 tabs and this shell is going to come off the bottom. We're going to try that out and see what happens. Well, as it turns out, the 4 tabs, and also there's 2 screws here in the floor, one there and one here. Those need to come loose, and then the floor pops right off. Make sure you don't lose that screw. There we go. And there's your lighting. Your 2 incandescent bulbs. You got the toggle switch to turn the lights on and off, and the wires were at one point taped down. I'll take that off. Here you can see I've got the board all installed. I used 2-way tape to mount it. You could use hot glue. I just used the 2-way tape because I have it. It's 3M. It's called extreme mounting tape. A lot of you RCO guys, servo tape, same stuff. It's really sticky. I mean, this stuff is so sticky. I was carrying this thing around by the board. It ain't coming off. So we'll see how it holds up over the test of time, but I'm sure it's in there pretty good. The switch for the on-off lights still goes to the board. You got your AC power coming in, common and hot, and then the LED strips get wired to the board here, positive, negative. Remember, it's very critical that those remain positive and negative to the board and positive and negative to the LEDs. You can see the strip of LEDs that are mounted inside. All I did was peel off the two-way tape adhesive. Just peel that off. I wiped the roof of the Caboose with a cotton swab and some alcohol to make sure it was nice and clean. That is stuck down good. It's not going to come off. I tried peeling it off and it's on there pretty good. So if you try to peel it off, you'll probably damage the strip of LEDs. I got the positive and negative here going to the board. I've already adjusted it. Take your flat blade screwdriver and put it in the adjustment pot here, up and down. You'll see it as soon as you put power to it. It's hard to tell with the shell off. You can't really tell what it looks like, so you might have to take it on and off a couple times to get the setting that you're looking for. I'm already done with it, so I'm ready to button this thing back up. Tape your wires down. You can paint them black, do whatever. I think I'm going to leave mine for now. I'm not sure if I'm going to do some type of interior in this later or not, but this thing is ready to go back together. Well, I've got it all back together and set in here with 18 volts to the track so you can see what it looks like. The shell's not attached to the floor yet because I had it inside. I was running it on my ceiling layout to adjust the lighting. When I put the shell back on, I think they were at full power, full brightness, so of course they were just blaring through the windows and I wanted to turn that down. So I played with it, I put the shell on it, I took it inside and ran it. You can see now there's absolutely no flicker. Dirty track, your frogs and your switches, these lights don't flicker. Well, I got this thing all buttoned back up. The trucks are back on. You can see the claws cut off. The Kadees are mounted now. Everything's been touched up with some black paint. I did not end up using the standard mounting location for the coupler because the coupler box stuck out too far. So what I did is I shaved those lugs off. And then I ended up cutting a styrene spacer that was the same thickness as those mounting tabs or those mounting lugs, whatever you want to call them, and used the outside holes to mount the coupler in. Can't use the back hole here because it's directly underneath the edge of the Caboose. So if you drill into there, you're going to go right into the back of the cab. So I used the outside holes, cut a spacer, mounted it flush with the end of the car. You can see the draft gearbox is directly up against the end of the car there. If you use the Atlas holes, it sticks out about 3/16 of an inch and it looks bad, so I moved it back. And you'll see here in the platform, if you look close, I drilled all the way through that platform. I used 3/8 inch screws. They go right to the top. They don't stick out. I know a lot of you guys probably won't like that, but I eventually plan on weathering this car, and once you touch that up with some paint and some weathering, you'll never even know it's there. And if I don't tell anybody it's there, most people don't notice it anyways. It gives the screw a much better bite when I drill all the way through the walkway there and just make the screw head so it's flush. I don't have to worry about it pulling off. The ones that I use with Atlas, I tried putting a 5/16 screw in there and they would work, but they just stripped out and you couldn't get the coupler box tight. So that is not going to come loose. That about wraps this project up. You got Kadee couplers body mounted, correct height, and we have constant lit, flicker free, low voltage LEDs. Oh, one other thing, I also put this on the scale and checked it for weight. It came in at 14.2 ounces. The Caboose is 9 inches long. It should weigh 14 ounces, so we're right on the money. This Caboose is ready for the layout. Thanks for watching, guys, and stay tuned for the next project.